Chair.
Okay, I call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of, whoops. Wait, you can hear me, yes? Okay, is to approve the minutes of last meeting. I don't know if you could bring those up, Eliza or Sherry, or if everybody has a copy.
1 second, I'll bring them up.
They're also on this screen too, if that's helpful. The minutes are also over there, if that's helpful.
That's helpful.
Once we review those, if anybody would like to make a motion to update those or a motion to approve them as they are.
I move to approve the minutes as they are.
Do we have a second?
I second.
It's motioned and seconded that we approve the minutes from the last meeting as they are. Is there any debate or are we ready for a vote?
We're ready for a vote?
Okay. Would each person say their name and indicate what their vote is, please?
I'm Kim McDonald, and I vote yes.
Todd Wyant, vote yes.
Paula Schumacher, vote yes. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We will accept these meeting minutes. The next item is public comment. Eliza, do we have anybody?
We have nobody present in the room or online for public comment.
Thank you. The next agenda item is to receive an update report from the Lawrence Police Department. Are they here?
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor.
Hi, Adam Heffley, Deputy Chief of Police. I just wanted to give a brief update on kind of the status of our working with the City Clerk's Office. And then I'm going to turn it over to investigators, Detective Pruitt and Investigator Williams, to talk a little bit more about some cases that we have worked in the past year. One of the difficulties we've worked through or are working through is probably more fair to say, is ensuring that anytime we have an incident, a report or a calls for service that has that comes into this area of body work, that we are able to efficiently let the city clerk's office know what's going on and do that in a proper way that doesn't violate any laws or rules about disseminating information improperly. So we're working on that so that, you know, on the other side of it is if they have someone whose license needs to be reviewed or an incident which triggers a review of a license, that the board can know in a timely manner and that nothing is falling through the cracks, or at least as much as possible isn't falling through the cracks. So what typically occurs now is anytime a patrol officer who is the primary responder to any call for service or incident comes into something that potentially touches this world, they will send a notification to the investigation division supervision, who then reaches out to, for now, Detective Pruitt, and it'll be Investigator Matt Williams also, so that it's not one point of failure. And then we work to ensure that we're notifying the city clerk's office, Eliza and Sherry, to ensure that they know what they need to do the work that you all are doing, and it's done in a proper and appropriate way. So it's been a little bit of a, I won't say struggle, but I'll say difficult process to make sure that everything is being notified through the correct and proper channels, because we can't just pass certain information across, because everybody has privacy rights, and there are core Kansas Open Records Act rules on what we can and can't provide out and in the course of an investigation. So we just want to make sure that we're being very careful about those rules, and that we're staying true to them. So that's where we're at right now. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And if not, I would ask Detective Pruitt and Investigator Williams to go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry, hearing no questions, go ahead.
Finding the mute button, sorry. Lisa's laughing at me. We do get contacted occasionally, rarely, on situations that might involve a bodywork license. We have, it was probably 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a case that came up. Someone made a report on someone who is a body worker here in town. Investigated that, found it to be non-founded, worked with the complaint turned to be non-founded, and worked with my supervision to go ahead and clear that. Otherwise, if you saw recently last week, there was an arrest made here in town, and a search warrant done at a local business. No one was licensed there, but we did work with the city clerk's office in assisting what we investigated, but we had to get some basic information from them. Late last year, still somewhat of an active case, we did investigate a place that provided body work, and there was no arrest made of that, but there's still an affidavit in the system for, because that other person's in another state, they're held up by another agency. But we're still working that case, but that one's been done, completed, with everything we know. We don't work a lot of these cases, but when we do, we take them seriously. We appreciate the clerk's office working with us to give us the needed information we need to show up and ask questions. We do, every time we make a contact, we do bring a packet of information, which includes the bodywork application, a copy of the city of the municipal code. We also have human trafficking information in there in multiple languages, so people can read that if they need to.
Trafficking state statutes.
Human trafficking state statutes in there. So that's really our desire, ultimate desire, if someone's in a situation they want to be in, we're going to hopefully help them. But yeah, that's all I've got. Deputy Chief, unless you have something else for me to clarify.
No, I think that's appropriate. I guess I just did want to add that one of our focuses of those investigations, at least probably the main focus, is to ensure that there is not human trafficking going on, and if there is, to address it and to work those as much as we can. Sometimes, we believe that's the case, and we work that process, and sometimes it isn't, but we're always willing to look at those cases as much as we can. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I would just assure that we're just not go willy-nilly, just running around. in both those other cases, this last year, most previously, we're contacted by somebody else. And then at that point, we begin our investigative process. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
And unless the board or anyone has questions, that is what we have to report.
I guess this is Paula Schumacher. I was just wondering then, it sounds like you don't have very many of these cases, and the ones that you had seem to have not resulted in like human trafficking. I know you can't share a lot of information, but do you feel that when it was possible that perhaps it was a case of not really understanding our laws and that the body workers did in fact kind of come into the fold and get registered?
Adam Heffley, Deputy Chief of Police. I wouldn't read too much into that the cases haven't progressed yet. I believe the first case was, I believe, human trafficking. There are a ton of obstacles that investigators, when they work these, run into. I'm not speaking to this specific case, but I do know the common practice is for the women that are in these positions, their passports are held in other states by other people. So there's a lot of obstacles that you have to work through, including language barriers, to try and get them to understand that we are not trying to further victimize them. And then another obstacle to that is a lot of times when these cases, I shouldn't say a lot of times, I am aware when these cases occur and we contact the women that are being put in these positions in some of these situations where trafficking is occurring. As soon as they are released from our care, or we put them somewhere to be safe, they're moved quickly so that that cases are difficult to continue. And then just the justice system's extremely slow and sometimes painfully slow. So I wouldn't want you to read too much into the lack of prosecution at this point for some of these. And then I don't mind saying that there are other cases where it isn't human trafficking. It's just probably a person who shouldn't be doing this work, doing this work. And those are infrequent, but do happen. And that is something that Sherry and Eliza have been working with the department and on their own with the advisory board on. And I think that part is working well.
And I'll add on to that. I think from our perspective, we do have individuals who come in who were not licensed and just can't come into compliance because they don't have the training or education. And so I think that's part of the not getting licensed is some of these folks just can't meet the licensing requirements.
Thank you, Sherry. I think you answered it better than I did. I appreciate that.
It was all insightful. Any questions from anybody else? Todd or Kimberly?
I don't have anything. Yeah.
I don't have any questions. Thank you for letting us know what's going on.
I second that. Thank you for your time.
And
Yes, appreciate the opportunity, and the investigators are the ones doing the real work. So I also thank them for their time.
And can I just add, Chair, if you don't mind, before they move on to, I'm sure, lots of important work. Is there specific information that you all are interested in, just so if we do an update in the future, we have an idea of the type? I know we had some struggles with getting data to you on our licensing, and it's good sometimes to clarify what is helpful to you all as a board to know, because that might help us in what we're wanting to track moving forward or pay attention to.
Yeah, I think there was a question of, I think it may have come up like, there seems to be places that seemed to fit a profile, and we're just wondering what was going on with that after 2 years in, and it was explained very well just now what was going on with that. And I can't think of any other specific things that are on my mind.
I guess I might ask from the police department perspective, if there's anything that they found particularly difficult to work with, or things that they feel are missing that we could provide as far as the law or what we've set up.
Deputy Chief Heffley, Lawrence Police Department. Detective Pruitt, if you have something in mind that you'd like to discuss, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I feel like this group has done a good job in a pretty difficult situation, trying to thread a needle between some kind of structured oversight and making sure people can operate businesses that are legitimately trying to operate businesses.
So, yeah, there are probably some things that would be helpful that specifically, like I said, we're just not running into businesses and checking licenses. We have a reasonable reason, if not probable cause, to be in the business when we arrive. There are other agencies that they can do license checks and just come in and do a license checks. And back in my recollection of when this all began, that's not something Lawrence wanted at the time. So it does make it a little harder. Really, we wait for these type of cases to come to us, and we definitely have plenty to do. But sometimes it'd be easier if there's whoever does licensing checks. I don't think maybe we have a licensing check on this. That would be, I would call a tool to make more contacts if we were to look at these more often. But that would be a question for Deputy Chief Heffley to answer if that's something we even want to do. But we wait for these cases to come to us. And there are not too many, but recently we've had a few. We don't want to pick on anybody. We don't want to be mean to anybody, but we want to make sure people want to be there. They're not being trafficked. They're not being forced to be there. And sometimes it's hard to check those things out without saying we're picking on somebody. And that's not our intention at all. We just want to make sure people are safe and abiding by the rules that everyone who has a bodywork license has to commit to, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess, this is Paula. Todd and Kim, I guess, from your perspective of working in the field, does it make sense that it would be a more hands-off approach, waiting for cases to come to them as opposed to, on occasion, doing random checks for licenses? Does it make sense for them doing the way they're doing it?
This is Kim. Just the fact that Lawrence has currently a lot of activity going on with some outside issues from this particular meeting, and I know the police department is extremely busy with those items. I think my thought is, as we expand as a community with the Panasonic being built, the community that's bringing in when we're growing, and the infrastructure, I don't know if, just what we have in place should just ride it out, and we're also post-pandemic. I think what I hear for myself personally are people that I come across that are quote-unquote massage therapists, Reiki practitioners, or anybody who's bodywork. And I always ask them, are you licensed? And they go, what are you talking about? I don't need to be licensed. And it's like, nay, nay. So those are the things where I'm concerned that where they're getting their information, and that's where I guide them to you, and also our webpage, and getting them the correct information. And there's just so much going on right now with Lawrence. I'm hoping that just what we have in place right now will be structurally sound as we continue forward with our panel. But I don't, licensing's check, I don't know, unless something happens in the future that something blossoms and that's really out of control, maybe that's something we can look at further down the road. I just don't see it being productive right now with everything else happening in our community. If we're okay and you're not seeing a lot of it and we're not hearing things from other people by word of mouth, that's always, you know, something to keep in the back of our minds. What are your thoughts?
Adam Heffley, Police Department. Kim, I tend to agree with what you're saying. There's, you know, the ability to do spot checks and stuff may have us picking up cases a little quicker or a little more frequently. And I know it is something that other departments and some other communities are doing. But there's a lot of different things at play, and one of them being community expectations. You know, how much policing, in air quotes, you do is depending on what the community wants. The second one is very much what you spoke of in all the different things going on. How much capacity would we have to go out and spot checks? And one of my fears is that the spot checks would be seen as a disingenuous way to do it, unless we were doing spot checks at every business, if we were just picking up certain ones. Because to be blunt, I think you could drive down the street and go, that's probably not a place that has somebody who's been through a lot of schooling and that sort of thing. And but there is that's not a good way to do business in a fair and partial way. So my personal opinion is kind of what you said. For now, this is probably a good way to do it, and I would hope that we would get a lot of involvement from the community that does know what the business should be, and letting us know places that we should be looking at. But if we get to a point soon or not soon where we need to be more proactive, that is something that we would not be opposed to. It's just a capacity thing. So, long-winded way of restating what you said.
Chair, may I respond to that as well? One thing that we have discussed, and I'd be curious to hear your input on, is we have done this with other businesses where we can do, it's not a perfect system, but Google searches, things like that, of massage, who is advertising massage, and we keep a list of where, one of the requirements is that anyone who is licensed as a body worker has to submit where they work. Because some may work at more than one location. And so we could then reach out to businesses who are advertising massage but do not have any individuals listed at working at their location, and just do, whether it's every 6 months or once a year, that check, and get notices out that just say you know, because the code does require that they do not allow any unlicensed individuals to work at their establishment. Now, that wouldn't necessarily lead to a license check, but we would just send notice. We do the similar if an individual calls that a solicitor was at their house and they didn't have a license. We'll call that, they don't know their name, but they know the business they were working for. So we'll reach out to that business and say, we require a license to be a solicitor in Lawrence. So that's something we could do from the clerk's office that's just reminding those businesses. But obviously, we would want to have that conversation with the police department, because we also want, there's that balance between making sure we're not doing something that might actually make a case or something they're working on more difficult. So we're going to continue to work with them to look at ways that we can, have that balance of trying to get individuals into compliance, but also not interfere with the work they're doing related to human trafficking. And I hope that made sense, that I connected those dots on that.
This is Paula Schumacher. I like that idea because it's not punitive, it's trying to get people to come into compliance. And it could be as simple as, somebody didn't update their place of work, or that a company didn't know, or a company moved and they didn't update their place of work. So I like that idea. I guess, I don't know if that would be a letter type thing that you could draft and we could look over maybe. And I agree with you, it doesn't have to be continual. It could be quite an effort to do that Google search and compare. So I think that sounds interesting. I would be interested in that. I guess I would like to hear what Todd and Kim think about that idea.
Yeah, to me, that sounds reasonable. Just, it seems like a reasonable check. I mean, we do have the ordinance and have some kind of way of seeing if it's being fulfilled. One thing that... Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. One thing that just came to mind as you were talking about, you see that massage businesses are advertising. And so, like on Google, probably sex businesses, sex trafficking, human trafficking places are probably not advertising on Google, I'm guessing. But as I found out as we were doing putting this ordinance into effect, that there are places for those businesses to advertise. And I wonder if that would be a way, I see you're being advertised on, what I forgot what it was, Body Rub or something like that, and use that as a not a probable cause, as a reason to check license.
Wow.
I think, with the social media and all the different search engines, and then you have the dark net, which can lead us down a black hole. I mean, there's so much to be looking at. And I think the other thing that what was brought up too is that individuals can work multiple places, and depending on what's going on with that business, they might end up becoming independent. And so for that business, you might have not necessarily all massage therapists or body workers that are up-to-date, licensed, but are changing for whatever reason in their lifestyle or change their career, whatever that is. That would be almost a revolving door as well. And that would, I think once you get, if they have a website or some other connection to a search engine, that's one way to do it. But then also know that once it comes into play with any type of search engine, anything can be just maneuvered behind back doors. That's the only other thing that I'm thinking about. So that might be also like a license check, having something checked on Google or something like that, and just to find somebody's name for research. That might be taking up a lot of everybody else's time as well than just doing a license check. I like the fact that we could have a letter that would go out to everybody that when it's time for them to renew their license, to make sure that certain things are still in compliance. And that would be a nice way of handing them, information, renewing their license, renewing their information about what they're responsible for as a body worker, and staying in compliance with our ordinance and warrants.
And I will just say that this is work that we do when we implemented this license. The only way we communicated with the bodywork community at that time, massage community, because we learned a lot through that process, was to search for businesses. And so this isn't something that we don't do. If we're updating codes, this is fairly regular. We did a big update to our taxi code and created licensure several years back, and we had to just search and find so we could reach folks to let them know that there's a change. So it's not, this isn't something that's unusual. I guess just to be clear that, we know it's not perfect, but it's the best way to try to find our stakeholders when we're going to make a change that might impact them if we don't already have their contact information because they're not licensed.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand now. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we have any more questions for the police department?
I do. This is Todd. Do you think that this ordinance has had any effect on human trafficking in Lawrence? Because it seems like if you can't, you have to investigate by complaint, that I think it's done a service for us to be able to stop, pull licenses from people who shouldn't be practicing. Thinking of specifically a couple cases of sexual assault that male massage therapists were doing. So it gives the city a way to stop that from happening. But has it had any effect on people who are trafficking? Is it less of it going on now due to this ordinance, or has it made any difference in your opinion?
Out of Bethlehem Police Department. So to say, has it had an impact on human trafficking? I think that's difficult to say, but I haven't seen a measurable impact on the human trafficking and the places that put forward that as their business model. I hate to use it that way because it's horrible, but the problem with those businesses is they operate outside of most laws, so they just don't care, quite frankly.
Right.
It does give us an avenue to start working on those at times. I have been surprised in a positive way about the additional tools to deal with the incidents that are sex assault as opposed to a human trafficking one. When the bodywork advisory and licensing and everything started, I think it was our desire to be more aggressive in that area, and for lack of a better way to put it, more aggressive in the policing of the licensure, which I completely understand. There's a lot of reluctance to that. I get that, and where we landed, I think is probably the best that we could do at the time. I think it will need to evolve over time, but I don't believe that we need to change course today based on what we have. I do think some more proactive checking of businesses would help us identify maybe a little sooner. But to be honest, how that looks, I haven't quite got lined out in my mind, because again, part of it's the clerk's office and what they have the capacity to do, and starting out with letters and stuff may be a good, hey, we're watching, and then a little bit of the more attention that we can draw to places that do this human trafficking, that if we can draw attention to those, maybe they at least go, well, don't go to Lawrence because they are paying attention to that. And while it doesn't solve the problem, maybe it prevents it just a little bit. And I have to take that win when I can get it.
Thank you.
As a follow-on to that, I guess, this is Paula, I'd like to know if going through the process of having this board has made the interaction of the police force with the bodywork community better.
Definitely police department. It totally has for me personally. I think I could speak for the department of saying we have a lot more contacts and a lot more knowledge about this than we did when it started. I feel like now I have an avenue to reach out to somebody and go, does this sound right to you? And a good sounding board of this, sorry, bad choice of words, a good group of knowledgeable people to go, does this track with what you guys know to be this kind of work, and get a good knowledgeable response. I was extremely ignorant about the industry going into this and was just utterly shocked at how many different disciplines were represented here in Lawrence specifically. So that has been good for me. But that's just on the police side. I shouldn't speak for Sherry on the city clerk side, because I think she probably interacts with the community more than we do.
Yeah, I think it's, I think we all know when this first rolled out, there was a lot of concern and worry from the bodywork community, but we certainly, working on it, have a good relationship. I hope they feel like they have a good relationship with our office, and having the advisory board, to be able to bring issues to when they arise has been beneficial. And in terms of, obviously, this is just anecdotal, and hopefully this can be argued perhaps from Detective Pruitt, but at least initially, we had a lot of interactions with individuals where I was handing out information that Detective Pruitt had provided regarding human trafficking, where I would bring individuals into my office and speak to them one-on-one because they were being brought in. They didn't speak English. They were being brought in by someone they were not related to, or couldn't really say who they were. So I know that at least initially in those first 2 years, we were at least able to provide a lot more awareness and some resources. The impact, I can't say. I recently had an interaction with an individual who did get licensed. We were able to help her get licensed, and she came back in and to meet with me and wanted to give me a gift, and she was no longer with the person she had been with previously. And so I think it may not be huge, it may not have been directly human trafficking, but I know that we've helped some individuals get into safer spaces and work that is legitimate, I guess, for lack of a better word, in terms of being licensed and getting training.
I have one more question for Adam. Sometimes as we get obvious creeps trying to, that mistake our business for a sex business. And there's, they have certain questions they might ask. Hey, do you do groin massages and things like that that are, not specifically breaking the law, but they're seeing where they could go. And we try to really screen those people out so that our therapists don't get into any dangerous situations or even just awkward and uncomfortable. Do you get calls from massage businesses saying, hey, this person is asking, apparently asking for sex, or do you have any of those kind of calls? And also, what would you advise us to do in those cases? Is it something you would want to be informed about?
So this is one of the things that we were finding very difficult about gathering information. So if somebody calls in to the dispatch center, because typically any calls start at dispatch center, the dispatchers have, a number of different ways to title the call. Something like that would be most likely be called an RSO, which means request to speak with officer. And then they would type, reporting party has questions about I'm just creepy guy in a massage business or something like that. So on the back end for data people to go in and find that call has been pretty hard. We do want that information, and I would try, and this would be a good thing that I think we could probably troubleshoot together, maybe something that we could work on between now and the next meeting, is what would be a good way to communicate that kind of information. Because to be blunt, what we're also running up against is staffing and resource issues. And if there's a call that says, they want to report information about a guy who was asking questions that were most likely, I think we all could probably agree, we're going down the road of he was looking for some illicit activity. That would probably go to a desk officer or a civilian report technician. So we probably need a way to collect that data, and then we could start working those in a way that's walking a line of appropriate, because if somebody's not broken the law, does the police department want to be showing up, knocking on their door, and that gets into where people would be uncomfortable with it. But at the same time, I'm with you. I want to make sure that the people that provide the legitimate kind of work here in town don't get put in a position where one of these guys is trying to take advantage, and anything to dissuade that is, I guess, long story short, that is something we're struggling with. That information I would like. What would help us all is if we could brainstorm some ways to communicate that information that ensures it's being taken into account, but not being used to do anything that we don't want our police force doing. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to dodge it. It's a really complicated issue that we need to look at. I just am not clever enough in the moment to come up with a way to take in that information and use it appropriately.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Paula. Maybe what we could do is have a motion to create a list of questions, inappropriate requests that massage body workers get. And I don't know if you would have like a level of inappropriateness or not with that, but maybe just as a draft that we could provide to the police just as a first step.
This is Todd. I took an online course for massage therapists about how to recognize when people are, when they come in, they just push a boundary and then push the next boundary, and then they're just seeing where they can go without incriminating themselves. And this class had a lot of real specific things. I could take some notes on that and send it to you if you would like.
I'd be very interested in that information. That would be good. Anything that helps us inform what we're looking at. I'm a data person. I like all that, so that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
Sherry, do we need a motion for that, or?
No, you.
Todd will just do it. Yay, Todd. You want him to provide that to you as well, Sherry and Elisa?
Yeah, that would be great, because that's something we could look at. Obviously, our code doesn't really have an education piece outside of what you're required to take, but perhaps we could talk to the city attorney's office and see if there's something that we could just provide or have on our site that kind of gives some guidance on those issues. So it's something we can, we could look at as well and see if there's something we could be doing to get that information out to the licensed community.
Oh, right, or maybe even work with the police as far as if it starts to become more and more of an issue, if you are experiencing these kinds of things, call it in.
Exactly.
Right? I see. Okay. And then I was wondering, do we want to have a motion for a proactive checking of businesses? We had talked about that before, maybe a once a year Google search. Doing maybe having Sherry and Eliza draft a process and a letter for us to review.
So you're obviously can do that, but I would say it is under the city code. It is under my purview to send notices. I think it's just more getting general direction that you all are okay with that based on the initial. I would say attitude around checks and stuff. I think it's just good to get that feedback from you all that you don't feel like that's too invasive of the bodywork community.
I'll leave that for Todd and Kim to respond to.
This is Todd. It's what the ordinance is. I don't think it is any imposition on a business to say, yeah, these are my employees and here are their licenses.
And I'm more than happy to bring that back to you all before we send it out to review if you want to see what a notice like that would look like. And it's generally just, we're aware that you are a massage or that you are, a massage business. We just want to make sure you're aware that the code requires you to keep a register and that you can't hire licensed individuals. Call us if you have any questions. It's not punitive. It's just a reminder to businesses that they need to do these things. And I think it'd be good to send to all businesses as a reminder, not just those that don't have some license, because hopefully then they'll be reminding their staff that, hey, I know you're licensed, but have you updated, that with the clerk's office?
This is Kim. I like that. I like that a lot. It's just whether it's coming from the city that it's time for me to do renew my license, or it's coming directly from you as the city into a licensed position to businesses. It's just clear and cut. There's no confusion. And I think you're just putting it out there that there is ordinances to follow. There is, it's written, it's on the books, and as a business, and just for protection for the body workers and businesses as a whole. I think it's just a great, when you stated it that way, it sounds really good to me.
Paula, I think it's really great too, because, there's people out there that just, they kind of plead ignorance and feel as though that's a good defense. So I think kind of spreading that net and just kind of letting people know, I think is a really good idea.
And are you all comfortable with us getting that out, with that general idea, or do you want, considering you meet quarterly, do you want to review it at the next meeting, or are you comfortable with us going ahead and just sending out reminders of what the requirements are? Because businesses are not required to be licensed, but there is code that mandates their actions in terms of keeping a register. So,
this is Kim. I'm personally comfortable with you going ahead and doing that. And if you want to quarterly just say, hey, just by the way, we sent this out, and just letting us know that, this happened and it's out there. But I think that's an excellent idea that you just move forward with it.
This is Todd. I agree with Kim.
Paula, I agree.
okay, great. Well, we'll get working on that.
Okay, if there's nothing else for the police department, I think we can let them go. And thank you very much for your report.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we have on the agenda is to receive the Bodywork Practitioner license report.
Okay, I have shared my screen. This is just some data we've put together. Do you want me to take the lead or you can? Okay, so we have spoke previously about our struggles with our current licensing software, how it's hard to track that data. So we've been trying to do so. You can see we've added to the last report we provided that so far, 6 months into the year, we've had 9 new applications and currently have 160 licenses active. This is all based off the submit date per year. So any license, these are all in regard to licenses that were submitted in 2022. The active date is not a true, that's the active date of when we pulled that number, not active per 2022. That's the number that is hard for us to track. We are implementing new software in late October, early November, which we hope to have much better data from. And we are also interested in maybe revisiting the conversation about what you are wanting to see from us as far as data goes, so we can get that a little more perfected for you.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the licensing software we're changing to is going to be, will affect every business or individual that's licensed through our office, and we'll be getting out communication soon to all of those stakeholders. It will now be all online. And so instead of submitting a physical application, you'll go to the software and basically renew or apply for your license in that system. And so we'll make sure we'll be communicating to the Bodywork community, but also every licensee. Again, it won't affect anyone until they renew their license or any new licensee. But that system should have better tracking and reporting does have better tracking and reporting built in, so we can pull the data. Right now, if somebody applies today and we set an expiration date and then they renew, it just extends it from the beginning of the license. We know the length of their term, but if for some reason they don't renew and that's closed, we don't really know exactly within the system when they closed, when the license closed out, or so it's hard for us to trend how many people were licensed in 2022. How many people were licensed in 2023 to see if we added licenses or if licensees are going down, just based on how it renews those. So, and I know you're all in, I think that's the trend you've been interested in seeing, and that's what's been difficult for us to do without it being a very manual process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do.
I don't.
This is Todd. I got from the city, I got an email, a survey about the trying to rework how the advisory boards are for the city, all of them in general. And they were talking about the massage and bodyworker massage advisory, or that capacity to be under the health department instead of the body workers. And I'm just wondering if you have any input or it seems like, most of the time that would probably be okay, but I can't imagine that anyone at the health department would have specific, knowledge base on how to bodywork issues. Like we had one incident come up with a male therapist, and I think that the input of the body workers on the board were able to show that this person didn't do anything that was outside of the massage or body work guidelines. And then someone else that came and they were, accused of a felony, and they were appealing the license being pulled. And, I don't know if probably anybody would have said no on that, but we had that ability, so if somebody has an issue, they can go to a board of their peers. And so that wouldn't really be your peers anymore if it was the health department doing this function.
So I do attend those meetings. It's the Advisory Board Structure Committee, and then I'm the staff liaison for that, so I can let you know where that stands. So they do, at their last meeting, and I mean, you can watch the video, they do have a recommendation, and part of that recommendation is to have the function of the advisory board, but I don't believe it's the function of the advisory board go to the health department, but the advisory board itself, the liaison to that would be more the health department because of the type of work that they do. I think part of, and again, I don't want to speak for them, but first I'll finish. The next step for that is that recommendation would then go to the city commission. So currently that is going to be put in the form of a recommendation that they'll review at their next meeting. Basically just how that information is going to read, summarizing their discussion, why they're making the recommendations. Once they approve that at their next meeting, it'll go to the city commission. Then it'll be up to the city commission who may make changes, adjustments, might, they can take none of it, take part of it, change it, update it, and then it would be direction. Either they may send it back to the board to do more work, they might send it then to staff to make the actual code changes to do that. Through that whole process, obviously there will be able to be public comment from all of you on that. My understanding is that it would be more that the board would still exist. It would just maybe be more under the purview of the Lawrence Douglas County Health Department, because of, I reflect back to when you all, during COVID, there was conversation about what do we do as a board when people ask us questions about how to do this safely. Well, that's really better, a lot of the aspects of what we do are better advised probably by the health department. Now, not related to licensure, but those would still go to a board if there were questions. That's how I believe they're presenting it. And again, then there's a transition. So if they make that recommendation and the commission says, we agree with that, what that transition looks like, you all would be involved in that conversation as stakeholders. What exactly does that mean? And how would that function and what would that look like? Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nothing is settled or finalized, but that's my understanding of what their, the thought process behind maybe having the board be under, or, Douglas County has advisory boards. I know there is a health board, so maybe the board would still exist, but again, have the health department as the staff liaison. But it has yet to be determined.
Right. Thank you.
This is Paula. So my question, I guess, on that brings up, and maybe you can't answer it, is that, so this board or liaison, would it be insurable that they had body workers on that board?
I just know that when this was discussed, one of the committee members that had discussed it said that his thought was that it would still exist as a board. It would just be under the health department. That's as far as the conversation has gone. And then they're charged with the transition plan. But they discussed perhaps don't work on a transition plan until they know what the commission is interested in. And then those conversations would come into play. How exactly will that work and what will that look like?
I see. Okay.
And
Thank you.
I would say at the state you know, most states have licensure of this type of work at the state level, and it usually is more of a health board
Right.
that oversees that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions on this agenda item?
I don't. Todd?
I don't.
Okay, the next agenda item we have is new business. Does anybody have new business?
I don't.
Todd, I don't.
This is Paula. So having no other items, we've come to adjournment. Do we have a motion and a second to adjourn this meeting?
Todd, I move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye.
Todd, aye.
I heard Kim say aye. So all are in favor of adjourning the meeting. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all so very, very much.
Thank you all. Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.